Hey everyone, I'm Chris Holmes. I'm the senior programmer here for RiverRun, and happy to provide some additional content for those of you who have just watched the film Events Transpiring Before, During, and After a High School Basketball Game. We have here with us the director of the film, Ted Stenson. Welcome, Ted, all the way from Calgary. Is that right?
Yeah, Calgary, Alberta,
Calgary,
Canada.
Alberta. So it took time out of his day to give us some answers and to answer some questions and give a little bit more insight to the film. So welcome, Ted, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Um, I was curious if, I guess just to kick us off, if maybe you could talk about, I'm always curious why filmmakers, I know this film's kind of semi-autobiographical for you, but why at this moment, kind of in your artistic development or your career, were you motivated to make this story at this particular time, I guess?
Well, I actually came up with this idea specifically to apply for a program that we have in Canada, which is like a micro budget funding program. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess that was kind of the impetus. I had wanted to make a project that was, something that could be shot on a small scale and at a micro budget level, which they sort of consider under $250,000, I guess. So yeah, that was kind of what kicked it off. But then I had also, at the particular time I started working on it, I'd been watching a lot of Michael Haneke movies, and there was one in particular that I was watching, and I thought, oh, it'd be funny to structure a movie like this, but make it about like something really banal, like a high school basketball game, and also make it a comedy and not like an incredibly bleak, social commentary about Austria or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was actually, as I was watching it, trying to kind of maybe place your influences or the kind of films you were studying as you approached it. And I couldn't quite, which I think is a compliment to the film, I couldn't quite come up with a film quite like it. I think you kind of just answered that, but are there other films, or maybe you come from the theater world a little bit too, I think I read, that kind of informed the structure or the storytelling style?
Yeah, I mean, this one Michael Haneke movie, 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance. The structure of that is sort of like, I mean, the film's kind of actually about a shooting in a bank, but it takes this really like broad viewpoint where, there's all these sort of disparate stories that you're not really sure how they connect. And then at the end, you sort of discover all these people that you've been watching are somehow linked to this shooting that happens at a bank. So in that respect, I kind of use that as like a structural device, I guess, in that, you would take one, not necessarily event, but like a place, like a high school. And I mean, in a way, the basketball game is the event that sort of, everything that happens is sort of loosely connected by that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the visuals, definitely Michael Haneke and that movie, he has like a very fly on the wall sort of approach, which is what I wanted. I'm kind of the idea was like everything would be as if you were like a spectator at a game. You're kind of in a locked off position and you're at a distance from things. So we wanted that sort of fly on the wall approach, or almost like a voyeuristic kind of security cam approach.
Yeah, nice. And you said this was actually shot in your own in the high school you attended growing up. Is that right?
Yeah. So it worked out really well because the film, I played lots of sports in high school and I played basketball. And I love basketball, but I was always on, like, our teams were always really bad. We were a small school and we always had these, like really kind of sad, sad teams. But so that was, kind of where the story idea came from. But then when we were scouting for the movie, like we needed a high school that could plausibly look like, the late 90s. And so, yeah, it ended up, the high school I had been to was available, and nothing had been changed since I was there. So it was, it really was a perfect, it was perfect because I mean, it was so easy once we had it, it was like I had based the script off of that school. So it was, really easy to kind of make everything fit in terms of where we shot everything.
It's kind of frozen in time in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really surreal. Like, yeah, I mean, being there, it felt like I had, just graduated the year before or something. Like it was like I had never left. So,
Well, the film really kind of takes me back too. I graduated in '97, so all the they're not quite lining up with like the Matrix, but definitely like the Chicago Bulls triangle offense. All the kind of just cultural things in the background were really hitting with me. So I enjoyed that a lot. And I guess I was curious about the Matrix. The reason was the Matrix a really influential film for you, or did that was it more of a pop culture thing that just you felt?
no, it really was. So I graduated 2002. So I kind of shifted the movie timeline back a little bit to just so that it could include the release of The Matrix, because I remember when I saw that movie, like I just it blew my mind. And like I was probably exactly like the annoying kid in my movie that's just always talking about The Matrix, and how much it blew my mind. So I don't know, for whatever reason, that was always something I had in the script, that this one character would just be, really fixated on the Matrix.
Huh.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny that, it's been over 20 years, I guess, since it's come out, and it's less of a kind of, I mean, at the time it was, like the special effects were so groundbreaking and everything. And, now I feel like maybe it's come around to being, just this, I don't know, nostalgic thing for a lot of people, I guess.
Have you watched it recently?
I haven't watched it in a long time. I probably should have. And it was interesting because the actors in the movie were, a lot of them are really young. And so that was one of the first things we'd talk about is like, do you guys even know, like, have you seen The Matrix? Are you even aware of
That was a
like
question I
this?
had for you. If you made them all go back and watch that film, or if they had already kind of all had it in their collective consciousness.
Yeah, I think that was one of the, maybe the only kind of homework I had given them was like, you guys should watch The Matrix if you haven't seen it. But um yeah, I mean, I just remember for myself, for whatever reason, it was like, you know, definitely going to the theater and seeing it was one of those movies that like I had never seen anything like that before. And it's just one of those certainly visually like kind of mind-bending movies. And
Did that was that like a film that kind of clicked you over from theater to wanting to be a filmmaker, or were you already kind of somewhere in between or on that track?
yeah, I think, I mean, I was always interested in film, and like always wanting to see whatever was coming out and whatever new exciting thing. I kind of got into theater later, like when I was in university. But
Hmm.
it's funny because this movie, like I didn't even think about it at the time when I was working on it, but I remembered later that when I was in university, I wrote a play that actually had a really similar kind of structure. And it took place in real time during a basketball game, and you only saw the bench. That was the entire staging. So in a way, I guess that idea of like, and it was also about a really terrible team that's kind of suffering through this like never ending loss. So yeah, I think that um, my experience like writing for theater kind of informed this movie too, and in the visual sense of like having walked off shots, kind of like a theater staging where you don't move the camera, you have people coming in or out or whatever to sort of spur the action. So yeah, I think that did that theater background, I guess, came into play in a lot of how I ended up making the film.
And then was there, I guess, the casting aspect that must have helped you with that? Was there one character or actor that was the trickiest to kind of find the right person for, or how did you go through that process?
Well, in Calgary, like we have, I mean, there is a film industry here, but it's been pretty up and down. So I would say like the pool of actors isn't huge here. They kind of gravitate more to Vancouver, Toronto, particularly in the past few years, just because it's slowed down. So we had a bit of a hard time finding, particularly like the younger characters. So we really tried to just put it out to any high schools, like anybody that was interested could apply, whether they had experience or not. So we did end up with a lot of kids that had never been in a movie or TV show or anything, and a lot of them had just had experience, in their high school drama program or whatever it was. But yeah, I wouldn't say there was any one role that was tricky to cast. It was actually really exciting seeing the kids, like particularly the ones that didn't have any experience and didn't have agents, weren't even used to the casting process. It was really cool to see them come in. And I think some of the most, for me, like interesting performances came from people that had no experience before.
And I mean, as far as magic, did you find that they were kind of, I guess my question is, were you sticking kind of straight to the script, or were you allowing them to ad lib? Were they kind of bringing their own life into the performances, or how did you work
Well,
with the actors?
yeah, it was interesting because I was a little worried because I'd always wanted to shoot every scene as one uncut kind of master take. So it kind of, I felt, would put more pressure on the actors. Like if they made a mistake or whatever, flubbed a line or something halfway through the scene, we couldn't cut away from it or something. And we couldn't necessarily like mix and match a performance throughout a scene. So, I was worried that maybe some of the more inexperienced actors would struggle with that. But I found some of the ones that had the least experience were the best at incorporating changes on the fly, because we did stick to the script pretty closely. But as we would be shooting a scene, like we'd sometimes drop lines or switch lines to different characters, or yeah, ad lib, add new things in. And I was really amazed at how quickly the younger actors particularly could kind of handle that and do it pretty seamlessly. So yeah, I don't know, it was interesting because I mean, to be honest, like I didn't have a lot of experience directing actors before this, particularly in this kind of style. So yeah, it was like a major learning experience for me throughout this, and it was fascinating to see how actors would respond to whatever was happening on the set, or how some people would struggle with certain things and other people could just seemingly do them seamlessly, particularly given the shooting style of not cutting away and having to do it kind of theater style, like just beginning to end every scene. So
Yeah. Were some of them students at that high school where you were shooting?
no, none of them came from that high school, but there were quite a few. Quite a few of the actors were still in high school, so they might have been in grade 11 or 12 or had just graduated. But pretty much everyone who played a student was student age. So because that was another thing, I didn't want to have like 25-year-olds or 30-year-olds playing high school students, which you sometimes see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really happy that we were able to get kids that I think, kind of looked more like regular kids as opposed to like commercial actors, and that they were this, that age.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also always curious to go kind of similar question to the last one, but I find that filmmaking is like 20% at least of it is just problem solving kind of on the fly and responding to things that you didn't expect. So are there moments where you found other kinds of magic that you hadn't expected that you're really happy with that are in the film? Or did everything kind of go pretty well to plan?
Yeah, I feel like it almost went like too easily. I read a quote recently that was like movies like sets that go smoothly produce like boring movies or something to that effect. But um yeah, I mean, I feel like because we were in one location pretty much the entire time and it was pretty controlled, like it was basically like being in a studio. And so we didn't really like, it really went smoothly. Like we ended up shooting, we finished 2 days ahead of schedule, and most of our days were pretty short. So I mean, in retrospect, I wish that I had kind of pushed it more and, used all the time I had, and tried to, experiment a little more with the time I had, because we were able to get a lot of the stuff quickly. So I mean, yeah, if I get the opportunity to shoot more films, I think that's probably one of the big takeaways for me is, even though I'm happy with how it turned out, and I think we did kind of get what we needed, I think we had the opportunity to kind of try more stuff and, you know, push the limits a little bit more. Cause yeah, I think we were in a safe environment. And so it probably, it was definitely a lot smoother than, your average shoot where you have to move around a lot and deal with.
Hi, who's this?
This is Thomas.
Hi, Thomas.
Okay, just
you gonna help your daddy?
He's mad at me.
Well, he'll get his time. This is your time.
Yeah.
That's cute. To go back to what you were saying, though, I was just curious if there's a moment in the film that a line of dialogue or a scene or a sequence that you're most proud of, or you feel like is the most you, or the most representative of kind of your personal style.
Yeah, it's tricky to say. I mean, I feel like in some ways I kind of pigeonholed myself in terms of the style I used. But I overall, I think I'm really, happy with the performances. And one of the scenes that I really do like is when the referee and his wife are arguing at the end of the movie, about the dog. I feel like that scene, I think the acting was really strong in it. But I also think that part of the reason that it works well for me is that we were able to kind of cut away a little bit more. So, I mean, I think that, I kind of committed myself to a bit of a rigid style, and, I didn't have a ton of options when we were editing. And that was one example that I thought worked well because we were able to sort of intercut it a little bit more. And so, yeah, that I think that for me, that scene, has a kind of nice pacing, and, I feel like it worked well, but I think that was also partly because of how we were able to edit it relative to the rest of the movie.
Yeah. So it sounds like kind of how well everything went to plan and how smoothly it is kind of it might be, maybe that's your calling card, or what you hang your hat on as an artist.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, as a first time feature filmmaker, you learn a lot. And I mean, it is kind of an amazing experience. I feel like anybody that is interested in movies, yeah, trying to make a feature is so, it's kind of can be depressing in a way, because, there's so many things you learn afterwards that you kind of wish you could apply. But yeah, I think that, yeah, I just learned so much from the process of making it that I feel way more confident as a filmmaker now. And yeah, I don't really think that there's any substitute for that experience.
Yeah. Well, now that we're in lockdown, and I mean, how is that? What's your next project, and how has this whole pandemic kind of affected the way that you've had to put the film out there, the release, and what you're going to do next?
Well, I think we were really lucky because actually the last thing I did before lockdown was we finished the sound mix of the film. So we were lucky, I think, in our timing. Like, Thomas, sorry,
Okay.
we weren't delayed at all. And I think that, even though it's a weird year and we didn't, get to attend festivals, really, like, we've had a good festival run, and, I'm super grateful that we got into the festivals we did, and that might not have been the case in a normal year. So I think for us, it was pretty lucky in terms of how the timing worked out. But yeah, during COVID, I have had the chance to do some writing, and I have a documentary project that I'm working on that is about the Alberta Rat Patrol, which so the province that I live in, Alberta, is the largest rat-free territory in the world.
Wow.
And we
Congratulations.
yeah, we actually have like a dedicated patrol that hunts for rats. And so if you see a rat, you're supposed to call them and they'll, come and try to exterminate the rats. So I'm doing a documentary about the rat patrol and the history of the rat patrol, which I'm really excited about because it's kind of a quirky piece of Alberta history. And yeah, I don't know. I've always been fascinated by it. So I mean, I've had the opportunity to do lots of research about that.
I'm interested. You got to send us that film when you're done
I
with
will for sure. Yeah.
it. Well, I think this has been great, by the way. And I mean, Thomas is getting restless, so I know you got to get back to the parenting duties. But I just want to thank you for taking the time to give us a little bit more insight into the film and say hi to a RiverRun audience in person.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me, and we're really excited to be part of the festival. So, yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed the film, and hopefully, I can bring my rat movie back there when it's
Yes, I
finished.
hope so too. And definitely, thanks again and best wishes for continued success with the film and everything else that you're into.
Thank you very much.
And with being a dad. And
Thanks.
thanks,
You
Thomas.